Welcome everyone to the Action Network Propapalooza. Here's what we're gonna do. It's time for our first prop drop of Super Bowl season. I have Grant Neiffer alongside me. I'm Nick Giffen, and we'll be giving out our first set of props. Then at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Chris Raybon, Sean Kerner will be right back here giving out their first trio of big game props. And then after all of that, we're going to do it again next Wednesday. Finally, we're all going to sweat these bets together when we watch Super Bowl 59. I know I'll be in the Action Network Discord, so make sure to join us there to sweat it together. Also, for each pick, as soon as we give out our picks, we'll be giving you easy to use links that instantly place our bets right here in the YouTube chat. Then as soon as we wrap up, we'll also be dropping a link in the episode description down below that gives you access to all the picks we give out on the show. So with that said, Grant, it is time to jump into our first set of Super Bowl 59 props. What's your first one, Grant?
Well, I wanted to do heads, but I'm still uncertain of which side I'm going to go, and they won't let me bet it on in Colorado, unfortunately, so I may have to drive across the border. But I'm going with Xavier Worthy anytime touchdown score. Now you can find this anywhere between I think 150 plus 150 and plus 175. I still like it at plus 150. I think this line's quite a bit off. Worthy has been fantastic the second half of the season, and we've kind of seen this year and last year. Like we've seen it before with the Chiefs where they try and figure out how to use receivers in what way. Like Rice at the beginning of last season or his first season, he wasn't really used that much. And then as the season went on, he got used more and more. Reed is scheming so many plays for him. I mean, he has what, over two plus rushing attempts in four of the last five games. He's been used heavily in the red zone. I think he has the most red zone opportunities over the last four games with 15. He's used in rushing and receiving plays in the red zone, and he probably would have been used a little bit more if they didn't decide to throw something entirely different with Mahomes' designed run in the last game. He's the leader outside of Kelsey in snaps on this team, and he's just being used in every single facet, especially in the red zone, by far the biggest red zone target here. So plus 175 for the wide receiver one in this spot, and I know there's Kelsey there. And I know Hunt will steal some touchdowns, which we'll get to that later. But game's going to be decently high scoring. It's close to 50 total. Might end up at 50 before game time. Might be over 50 before game time. But Worthy is going to be used so heavily here that the odds just don't reflect how much he's going to be used.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Look, our prop projections, if you have Action Pro, you can see all of our prop projections. Xavier Worthy is one of our biggest anytime touchdown values. I personally have him in the plus 140s. So, Grant, like you said, plus 150 even, all the way up to plus 175 is kind of the range out there. All of those are showing as value by me. But for my first pick, and this is not a pick against you, Grant, because we'll talk about this in just a bit. But my first pick is Xavier Worthy to actually go under 5.5 receptions. You can get that at minus 125. I'm only going to play this to win half a unit. I'm not going full unit on this one. I'll explain why in just a bit. But you mentioned Xavier Worthy has been an absolute workhorse. They've been scheming him up, and it shows in the last 5 games. His usage rate is through the roof, even especially in targets. But I think that's also pushing this line upward. And even if this volume remains high, his efficiency has also been just too high. He has a 73% catch rate over the last 9 games, which is 6% over expected based off of depth of target and coverage and things like that. So he should be more around a 67% catch rate just on average in the spots he's faced in the last 9 games. But now he faces the Philadelphia Eagles, and their trio of cornerbacks is just amazing. Quinyon Mitchell, Darius Slay, Cooper DeJean. And in the playoffs, Xavier Worthy has lined up out wide or in the slot on 96% of his snaps. So that's going to match him up against those trio of backs, that three-headed monster there in Philly, all top 25 graded cornerbacks by Pro Football Focus. And when Xavier Worthy does line up out wide, he skews more towards the left, and Quinyon Mitchell is the Eagles' right cornerback, right, lining up with the defensive right, which is the offensive left. So that'll put Xavier Worthy here up against the Eagles' toughest cornerback in Quinyon Mitchell, outstanding first round rookie pick. So overall, when you blend the amount of snaps he should face versus Mitchell versus Slay, Cooper DeJean, I'm expecting about a 6.5% lower catch rate than expected. And of course, that's added on to that extra 6% he's come over expectation. So, around a 12% lower expected catch rate than he's had in his past 9 games. I also personally bet Patrick Mahomes under 36.5 pass attempts. I talked about that on the Favorites podcast, and you can see it in my Action Network write up. Fewer pass attempts, fewer chances to catch the ball. So I'm projecting Xavier Worthy at a little over 5 receptions, about a 62% chance he stays under 5.5. But Grant, here's why I'm only going half a unit on this, because the other half unit, I have parlayed your Xavier Worthy anytime touchdown with the Xavier Worthy under on receptions. And I want your analysis on this, Grant. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially knowing they've also been handing the ball off to him in the red zone.
Yeah, no. So I mean, that's the thing. People might look at this and say, "Oh, why would you do that or anti-correlated bet?" Well, there's a few different reasons. One, yes, he's averaging 2 or over 2 rushing attempts per game in the last 5 games, and the Super Bowl. I'm guessing he's probably going to end up with 2 or 3 here, potentially more. They're scheming a lot of plays for him. Number two, he has 15 red zone opportunities in the red zone in the last 4 games. In that time frame, he has, I think, 36, 35 targets, and he has 6 rushing attempts, 7 rushing attempts. So roughly like 38, 40% of his total opportunities are actually in the red zone. They purposely scheme that, and they're more likely to scheme a rush in the red zone. I think he said 4 in the last 4 games. So they're not perfectly anti-correlated. Again, it's not that likely that he'll end up with 6 receptions in this spot. And you're really betting the number, because my immediate thought when I was going in to do research for this stuff was I'm going to look at Worthy over receptions immediately. And then I see it at 5.5. I think I saw it at 6.5 over at DK. I'm like, oh, they've adjusted this too much. The difference between 5.5 receptions at -125 and 6.5 receptions at -125 and 4.5 receptions at -125 is just a whole world of difference. Like, it's massive. So what people don't often realize is the number is really what matters, and 5.5 receptions is drastically higher than 4.5 receptions, even though it's 1. The difference in odds of winning a bet is huge. And so the number is just too high here. And also you have all those rushing attempts. So it makes a huge difference in these things. And realistically, receptions are too high, and the touchdown number odds are too high.
Yeah, so that would be parlaying both Grant and my picks here. Xavier Worthy anytime touchdown with under 5.5 receptions. Right now, I think the best available is about +425. If you tailed me a couple days ago, I got it +475. Still like it at that +425 number. And Grant, you did mention the coin toss a little bit. I did do the math on the coin toss. Both head coaches have deferred 100% of the time the last 3 years. So it is a true 50-50 proposition on who will start with the ball, assuming the coin is actually fair. It's not biased towards heads or not biased towards tails. And I think in the Super Bowl history, it's 30-28. So I'm not betting on the coin toss, but if you want to bet on it, it's all for fun. So the stage is set for Super Bowl 59, and there's many prop bets to come. That means now is the perfect time to upgrade to an Action Pro subscription, because only Action Pro subscribers get real-time pick alerts from our experts like Super Bowl prop masters Sean Kerner and Chris Raybon, and myself, and Grant, plus all the tools you need from turning a profit betting in 2025. Right now, new subscribers can get $40 off a year of Action Pro at actionnetwork.com/SB. That's $40 off for the full year, so you'll be covered for the Super Bowl, March Madness, baseball, NBA, and even next college football and NFL season. So don't wait. Visit actionnetwork.com/SB to get $40 off of Action Pro. All right, it is time for our second pick here on the Propapalooza, and I'm going to kick it off for pick number 2. And I'm going super chalky, Grant. I don't care that this is the number 1 most bet player prop. I'm taking Dallas Goedert receptions, but in this case, instead of taking over 4.5 receptions, I'm going to ladder his alt reception. So I'm going to take 6 plus at plus 160 for a half unit, and I'm going to take 7 plus at plus 310 for a quarter unit. I'm totally happy to side with the public, and here's why. This is one of the most likely games all year for the Eagles to trail, right? They were 14-3 in the regular season. Now they're playing the number 1 team in the NFL, at least based off record this year. The Chiefs are favored, and obviously the Eagles haven't really been underdogs that much this season. So this sets up to be potentially one of their most pass-happy scripts of the season. Also, the Chiefs, when we look at them defensively, they allow a target on 19%, a little more than 19% of the routes that receivers run against them. Well, their 4 main cornerbacks, McDuffie, you got Naz Johnson, you have Worthy, and then, I'm sorry, Watson, and then you have, who's the last one I'm forgetting? There's one other, but, right, Nickelback. They allow sub 18% on all of their routes run. So what that means is any other, defensive area has to be above that 19%. And in fact, when you do the math, it's around 22% target rate. Well, Dallas Goedert, he only lines up out wider in the slot where these other guys will be covering him less than 40% of the time. So in 60% of the time, he'll either be in line, occasionally in the backfield, to be lining up in the spots where the Chiefs allow a 22% plus target rate per route run. So there could be substantial volume here for Dallas Goedert. I mean, the Chiefs allow 6 receptions per game to the position itself, the tight end position. And then we look at, this is kind of interesting. When we look at games where Dallas Goedert played and Devontae Smith played and A.J. Brown played, they've only had 6 full games together this year because of injuries to all 3 of them. And it turns out Dallas Goedert is actually the second highest targeted per route run of this trio, ahead of Devontae Smith in those 6 games. And when Jalen Hurts is pressured and Kansas City gets a top 5 pressure rate and a top 5 blitz rate, he targets Goedert at the second highest rate when all 3 of those are on the field. So again, ahead of Devontae Smith. So I'm projecting 5.2 receptions. Now, Kerner, Raybon, they're lower than me on this. So, obviously they're the GOATs. I definitely trust them. But my personal projections, I have 5.2 receptions for Dallas Goedert. So I love getting this significant plus money if the Eagles are going to trail. So those are my picks, but I really like these. If the Eagles are trailing, this makes a lot of sense. So, maybe take the 6 plus with some kind of market where the Eagles are trailing, maybe a first half Kansas City money line type thing. You can parlay those and take Dallas Goedert that way as well. So real quick, your thoughts on that one, Grant?
Yeah, I like it. I trust you. Everything you said was right on point. I mean, I don't generally like going with the public too much, but also you have to realize that we're doing this a full week and a half before the Super Bowl. So realistically, this line, the odds on this line are probably going to get lower and lower. So if you're going to go with the public, it's generally better to do it earlier on in the week, or in this case, 2 weeks in advance. So I like it. And you never steer me wrong.
Exactly. And Chamari Connor was the name that escaped me there for Kansas City's Nickelback. So Grant, let's get to your second pick.
All right, I'm rolling with another touchdown bet. We're going with Kareem Hunt to get a touchdown. And strangely enough, I've been betting both these guys to get a touchdown almost every single week for last 5 weeks or so, and it's gone very, very well because they just keep scoring. But Hunt has just completely taken over this RB1 role. Like Pacheco, last 2 weeks, 29 and 31%. Snap share, Hunt, 58 and 47. Like he's the go-to guy, and it's the same in the red zone. Hunt, over the last 4 games played, he has 9 red zone touches. Pacheco has 3. Like it's Hunt, and it's Hunt in the red zone. And I mean, Hunt may not be a great running back, but the main thing is, if you need 4 yards, he's going to get you 4 yards. If you need 10 yards, he's going to get you 4 yards. And in the red zone, generally when you need 4 yards, you'll just run the ball, and he's going to be the go-to guy. He's easily the go-to guy in this spot. And I know that the Eagles have allowed second least amount of rushing touchdowns this season. They've also allowed the fifth least amount of passing touchdowns this season. They're just a good defense that's played a lot of bad opponents. What we care more about here is the total, which is close to 50 in this spot. The implied team total for the Chiefs is around 25, depending on where you're at. So there's going to be touchdowns scored. We saw what happened in the last Super Bowl, which I get these teams are different, but it was a very high scoring game there, 38-35. And on top of that, Chiefs have kept games close pretty much every time they've been in the Super Bowl. Last year, we saw an overtime game. 2 years ago, in this exact same matchup, we almost saw an overtime game. Overtime is also a possibility. I mean, as of right now, I don't know what your thought process is. I like the over, and I'm probably going to end up betting it. I think that both these teams can play to their opponent. I mean, no one plays better to their opponent than the Chiefs do, because they are every single game within one score. So likely to be close, as it is with every single Chiefs game. And a small chance here at overtime. What does your model have for overtime right now?
For overtime right now, I'm technically showing value at 13-1, but I haven't run the full version of it where I adjust for things like kickers and weather. Of course, weather's not a concern inside the dome, coaching decisions. So not fully there yet on an overtime bet, but I will say, you mentioned the total. Our luck rankings also do luck totals, and our luck total for this game is minus 0.1. So 0.1, no signal, right? There's no luck factor where these teams have been scoring more than expected or scoring less than expected. So I think the total is pretty fair. You lean over, and I think that's totally fine. I will say, if you are taking over, make sure you get it now before it moves up. If it ever crosses 51, that is like the most key number for these higher scoring games, is 51 points. So if it hits 51, 51 and a half, then I'd probably look towards leaning toward the under, but I definitely don't have a play on the total myself. So we each have two picks. I have one more for you all, but before we get to that, I just want to let you all know, if you don't know about this, Bet What Happens Live is our live in-game player prop betting show. And of course, it will be here for the Super Bowl. The show will air in the Action Network Discord. That is at discord.gg/Action Network. All right, one more player prop for me, and I'm going to go to the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to take Kansas City's Jaylen Watson over half an interception. You can get that at plus 950. If you want to find that over at FanDuel, defensive props, player to record an interception, and then take Jaylen Watson over half an interception, or to record an interception. So I'm going to throw out a quarter unit on that at plus 950. Let's start with Jalen Hurts, of course, who's going to be the quarterback throwing the ball should Watson get the interception here. Hurts has had some pretty significant interception luck this year in terms of avoiding interceptions. His 3.2% turnover-worthy play rate is actually a full percentage point higher than Mahomes at 2.2%. Now, yeah, Mahomes has had a lot more volume, but that means their turnover-worthy plays have been about the same. Yet Mahomes has 11 interceptions this year to Hurts' 5 interceptions. Jalen Hurts also has had passes defended on 11% of his pass attempts versus just 9% for Patrick Mahomes. So certainly some interception luck going on here for Jalen Hurts. And then when we look at where Hurts does throw interceptions, his most frequent interception locations throughout the past 3 years have been either deep to the left or short to the right. I'm going to focus on that short to the right because Jaylen Watson is the short to the right guy for the Kansas City Chiefs. He lines up as the Chiefs' left cornerback, meaning the offensive right, on around 70% of the snaps that Jaylen Watson plays. This year, Watson has 7 passes defended, which is 5 pass breakups and 2 dropped interceptions in just 8 games, right? He's only played 8 games this year. He's had some injuries that he's dealt with. But those are the highest rates on a per game basis for the whole Kansas City Chiefs team. In his career, he has 3 interceptions on 24 passes defended, which is actually a bit unlucky. Maybe it goes to those dropped INTs. So we'd expect around 4 to 5 interceptions in his career. And this season, he's broken up 15% of all passes that have been targeted towards him. That's more than double the NFL average of 6.9%. So this all kind of matches up well. You have Hurts lucky with the INTs, Watson unlucky in getting the INTs. That's the spot where Hurts tends to throw interceptions, and Watson has been playing outstanding this year. So that's my final one. Grant, I don't know if you have any thoughts on a defensive player prop there.
I've got nothing. I've stayed away from that pretty much my entire gambling career, and I trust you.
And, again, this is a spot where the Eagles could be trailing more than most of the time. They've led on 67.5% of the snaps this year in the games they've played. This could be a spot where they trail on 67.5% of the
Yeah.
snaps, right? So
Jalen Hurts
potentially
being
more.
forced to throw is a lot
Yep.
different than just Jalen Hurts throwing. I mean, his
Yeah.
interception rate, maybe this, maybe that. It's going to be different when he's in a spot where he's playing catch up, especially if it's on the last drive, which they haven't had to do outside of what, week 4, week 2. I think were the
Yeah.
only two times they lost, and they haven't really trailed late in the game any other time because they can, if there's 15 minutes left and you're down by a touchdown, they can still run the ball every single play on that entire drive. It's a little bit different when there's 4 minutes left on the clock and you're down by
Mhm.
a touchdown. You're going to be forced to throw a ball. And you're probably going to be forced to throw into more interception worthy plays. Plus, on top of that,
Mhm.
it's going to be a big difference when you have to not take a sack and you have to throw the ball up. And so everything kind of points towards more interceptions because he's probably not going to get away with throwing the ball 20 times in this spot. So
Yeah.
everything kind of points towards an increase in interceptions for Hurts here. And you know exactly where it's going to, it sounds like, from all the numbers. So
There we go. All right. So that is going to wrap it up. 2 picks from Grant, 3 picks from me for our first Propapalooza. But remember, Chris Raybon and Sean Kerner will be back right here in less than 2 hours, 6 p.m. Eastern time to drop their props. And let me tell you, we got some doozies on this one as well. They're finding all the fun markets. I'll be looking into all the ridiculous markets next week as well, hoping to replicate some of that Christian McCaffrey juice we captured last year with that first rushing attempt over on his yardage. A lot of those fun, exciting, more randomish type props that you'll see will pop up next week. So we're going to do it all over again next week. But for Grant Neiffer, I am Nick Giffen. That'll do it for this first Propapalooza for Super Bowl 59.